Third one is get rid of the Electoral College. That's like the most unsupported one, I feel like.
Okay, yeah. Okay, please.
But with that one, the reason I say get rid of the Electoral College is because it basically invalidates the votes of the majority of Americans. You live in New York, so you should understand this. No matter who you vote for president, it's not going to change the actual effect of your vote. You know, if you're a conservative in New York, you're screwed. If you're a conservative in California, you're screwed. If you're a liberal in Alabama, you're screwed. There's absolutely nothing you can do to actually affect the presidential race. People will say, oh, it protects small states. And it's like, no, that's not actually what it does, because Alabama isn't good. Like, they're always going to vote red. They're a small state. Louisiana, Mississippi, like all of these states are small, but the Electoral College hurts them. It only helps the states in our country that are polarized, that are purple. Those are the ones that really matter. And so if we just let everyone have an equal vote in this country, you would end up with a politician that represents the people more, instead of just the people of Pennsylvania, Iowa, I don't know the other ones, Florida sometimes, but not so much anymore. Yeah, it changes every election, but like Pennsylvania, Ohio, Wisconsin, it changes. As we said, it changes every time. But like those purple states are the ones that actually really matter. And if you're voting outside of them, you might as well not even vote.
Well, I get that, right? I do understand that, but I see Electoral College as a check. It's a check and it's a balance, because it gives the minority more power, which
but it doesn't though. Like how does it functionally give the minority more power?
Because otherwise, most presidential elections would be dictated by California, New York, and like Boston. Like Chicago, the cities, right? The cities. And cities, you gotta have a representative. It's a representative republic democracy. It's a democratic republic democracy. It's a hybrid of all this bullshit, right? So the people in Middle America, the people who live in Alabama, have a voice in this. Farmers and suburban people, upstate New York, they have a voice in federal politics. Now, for state elections, state senators, conservatives have more of a voice, and like especially in New York, upstate New York's all red. West Massachusetts, all red. Northern California, red. So there is the checks and balances there for state elections, but for federal elections, specifically president, I get it, because I think you're right. It does give more power to the purple states, as opposed to without Electoral College, it gives all the power to the blue states. Now, if you're going to ask me, who I'd rather have the concentrated power be towards, I'd rather be purple. I'd rather be purple than red, or specifically blue. And again,
I think like the argument you're making, like, and I think you kind of just realize it, is that and I can get behind we should go to the center of America, and if we're going to give more important to any state, then it should be the purple ones. And I can agree with that. I just don't think that your value to this country should be determined by what state you live in. I think everyone is created equal and therefore should have an equal vote. You said that cities will determine. No, cities don't determine. People determine. People just happen to live in the city.
In those cities.
And what you're arguing for is the Senate, which I also think is stupid. But what you're arguing for is the Senate. It gives smaller states more power, right? But I think it has become to such an absurd degree that someone in California has 67 times less voting power than someone in Wyoming. And like, that's insane. And people were like, oh, well, you have to protect, the states. And it's like, states don't vote. They aren't people. They don't matter. They're just arbitrary lines in the sand. They don't have to. If the state died, no one would cry. But if a person dies, someone would, right? Like that's how I think everyone should have an equal vote. And I don't think that's incredibly. It surprises me how contentious of an argument that is, because I think that like our very like basic kindergartner brains could be like, oh no, it makes sense that everyone would have an equal vote, and if I move from California to Wyoming, my vote shouldn't be discredited by 67 times, or the opposite of that. But yeah,
I would make a compromise in Electoral College. If you want to get rid of the Electoral College, okay, but presidential needs like a 60% majority to win.
we won't have a president. Well,
I know, but like I don't think a simple democracy. This is a principled stance. I can't think of a specific example, but like a principled stance. I don't think like a one vote difference should determine anything. I think you should, if you want a majority, if you want to do majority rule, it should be a high majority. Which is why you can talk about we can talk about the filibuster too. But I had a friend say that he believes that the filibuster should be higher. If you want to change something, you need more people agreeing on things. That's the thing that should actually be changed. Because if it's 50-50, You're just going to be having constant change back and forth, which isn't going to solve anything. So if you don't get rid of the Electoral College for presidential election, I say it can't be just be 50-50. It should be like 60 or 65. I think that's a pretty fair compromise.
So I disagree with that too. And I'm going to steal a term from conservatives where they say run the government like you run a business, right?
Right.
And if you listen to many like business leaders, like big CEOs, big, very successful people, one of the things that they say over and over again is if you want to succeed, fail and fail fast. Because the more you fail, the more you learn. And the more that you can get done. So anything that, and again, there are always checks and balances. Nothing is an absolute, but I think that systems that make it more difficult to change, the opportunity cost of that is learning what works and what doesn't. I would rather try 10 things and have 4 of them not work than try one thing and have it work. Like to me, progress, and I'm a progressive. This is there's a bit of a tangent, but like when I was like 4 or 5 years old, whatever it was, and the first presidential election I was going on, or watching the news, the debates, and I asked my mom, I was like, "What's the difference between a Democrat and a Republican?" And she's an independent. My dad was a Republican at the time, and she's like, "Well, in general, Democrats want to change things, and Republicans want to keep things the way they are." And I think that to this day, that explanation to explain it like I'm 5 really still fits.
Yeah, it does. I agree.
And in my mind, I would rather be trying to change things. And even if they don't work, then we know it doesn't work and we can move forward and try something else instead of just doing the same things we're doing now, which is progressively making our country worse. And I think most Americans agree with that.
I'll keep to your business.
The last part.
I'll keep to your business analogy. Have you ever worked for a startup?
Yes, I have.
So,
yes, I have.
I worked right out of school, right out of Hofstra. I got the job. Actually, probably this time 6 years ago, I got the email saying I was hired. So I had about 3 weeks left of college left knowing I was employed, and I gotta tell you, dude, I didn't give a fuck about classes. It was the best. I just didn't care. But anyway, it was a startup. Their goal was to be the Economist on video. Right? Do you know what Cheddar is? Cheddar News?
Yeah.
So their main competitor at the time was Cheddar. Now, a year and a half later, gone. Off the face of the earth. Unemployed, and it was just a nightmare. Right? But what caused the destruction of this startup? It was the consistent, constant change. Every few months, every few weeks, we were changing and pivoting and pivoting. And if you have a system, especially in government, where as polarized as we are now, think of gun laws. If it was a 50-50 split, it would be restrictive gun laws. 4 years later, unrestricted gun laws. 4 years later, restrictive gun laws. 4 years later, unrestricted gun laws. In this, nothing would work. It would be a complete mess. So, especially when times are polarized, this is why I do kind of tend to agree with my friend a little bit. In times of polarized and nobody can agree, keep it as is. Keep it as is until the only thing that's worth changing is something the majority of people agree on, which we would agree. The populace is there on most things. The people you elect can't agree on things. Keep it as is, because the constant change isn't good either. Because if you're just trying to figure it out, especially as a government, you're spending a lot of money you don't have, that's where destruction comes in.
I think that I could get more behind restrictions on the congressional level. If we had more change on the electoral level. And unfortunately, I believe the incumbency win rate in this country in Congress is something around 90%.
Yes, it is.
Yet Congress in general has an approval rating of, oh God, I haven't looked at it yet, but
like
I might
13.
be able to count it on my fingers
like
now.
23%.
And so like when those two things happen, I don't think I'm a crazy person if I say that isn't right. Like that isn't how things should work, but it is. And so when you have unchanging politicians and your argument is, well, we need to, if politicians are going to disagree and not change, we need to, slow things down. That's never going to change. Like it just isn't ever. We're never going to end this period of extreme polarization. If we keep doing things the way we're doing, we're just going to get more polarized. And so I think that there are common sense changes, like term limits and restrictions on gerrymandering and things of that degree. Age limits, I think, are very important because say what you will, but someone who is 65, 70, 85 isn't going to have a long-term view of this country in the same way that a 30, 40, 50-year-old is that represents the actual, majority of the population. And I think legal weed is one of those things that people talk about, where I look around. Biden said he'd legalize weed. I think it's over 65% of the country is cool with legal weed. His base would love it. His critics would love it. Why hasn't he done it?
Well, he wrote the crime bill. That's why.
Yeah, he wrote the crime bill.
He wrote the crime bill. He's going to release all those people he put in there, please. And Kamala's his vice president. All the people she put in there, please.
Yeah, and it's like, this would be an easy. Your approval rating sucks right now. This would be an easy win for you.
Yep.
I was surprised he didn't do it going into the midterms. But it's because he's an old guy who just is not aligned with the average American opinion, because he's an octogenarian.
Well, remember what he told his donors: nothing will fundamentally change. And
yeah.
Joe Biden is a status quo boner machine. The only thing that gets his dick hard is the status quo. But we went through 3. Before we went out of time, let's move to the 4th one. What's the 4th way to make change? Electoral College, man. That was a good one.